A strategic weapons shipment quietly cuts through international waters, deliberately avoiding standard shipping lanes. But before the ship's radar systems can even identify the threat, the sky is torn apart by the roar of an F-16 formation. In a split second, the massive Iranian-flagged vessel, carrying a secret payload of ammunition, is locked on and completely neutralized. This was no accidental skirmish. It was a closed-loop tactical interception, striking directly at the jugular of a weapons supply network, capable of immediately altering the maritime balance of power. The question is, how did the intelligence grid and tactical airpower coordinate to cast this net? The regional geopolitical climate is inherently stretched as taut as a tripwire. Even a minor repositioning of strategic hardware is more than enough to spark an uncontrollable chain reaction. Right in the middle of this suffocating atmosphere, maritime surveillance systems suddenly picked up a highly suspicious movement signature. This was absolutely not the familiar fast attack craft or swarming patrol boats. Initial reconnaissance data revealed a massive surface vessel with a tremendous displacement, flying the Iranian flag, silently weighing anchor. At first glance through long-range optical lenses, this metal behemoth could easily be mistaken for a standard heavy-lift commercial freighter. However, seasoned military intelligence analysts needed only seconds to realize its deck structure had been meticulously modified. The entire upper flat deck had been reinforced and expanded, turning it into a flight deck fully capable of accommodating squadrons of heavy armed helicopters. Even more dangerously, this design allowed the vessel to operate as a mobile, floating missile launch platform right in the middle of the ocean. The ship plodded into international waters, constantly altering its heading and deliberately avoiding busy commercial shipping lanes. This stealth in plain sight maneuver immediately put the Pentagon on high alert. What kind of weaponry was this ship actually transporting that required such extreme operational security protocols? In truth, no phantom on the ocean can remain entirely invisible to the spatial surveillance grid of the modern era. From tens of thousands of feet above, strategic reconnaissance drones like the RQ-4 Global Hawk, operating in tandem with early warning satellite constellations, had been silently tracking the target long before it even left port. The crucial giveaway wasn't the ship's silhouette, but the physical anomalies it left in the water. Image analysts keenly identified a small yet decisive detail: the ship's wake and its draft. The hull was riding significantly deeper in the water than normal. This proved that deep within its cargo holds lay an immense physical mass, drastically heavier than the empty hull of a standard helicopter carrier. Furthermore, spectral scanners and thermal sensors consistently registered anomalous heat signatures emanating from the sealed lower decks, a telltale sign of climate-controlled environments used to store high-intensity military munitions and electronic components. These raw data fragments were immediately encrypted and transmitted via data link directly back to the Tactical Command Center. Cross-referencing this telemetry with human intelligence reports detailing unusually high activity at covert underground bases just days prior, the full picture snapped into focus. The Pentagon quickly reached a definitive conclusion. This was absolutely not a routine show-of-force exercise. This vessel was acting as a strategic pack mule. So, what exactly was hidden beneath that massive exterior? To be blunt, it was absolutely not your standard infantry rifles or gear. Top-tier intelligence sources had been whispering for weeks about a massive, clandestine arms deal. That heavy payload altering the ship's draft that we just talked about? It turned out to be dozens of advanced anti-ship cruise and ballistic missile systems, complete with integrated targeting radar modules. A strategic shipment originating from the east, bearing the distinct hallmarks of Chinese military engineering. Those of you who have served in the Navy or know your hardware understand all too well the lethality of new-generation supersonic anti-ship missiles. They don't just skim the sea surface to slip under early warning radar nets. Their explosive payload is more than enough to break the keel of any major destroyer with a single direct hit. The fact that a massive floating Iranian launch platform was now possessing this sheer volume of firepower was nothing short of a ticking time bomb on the maritime chessboard. It didn't just point a dagger at vital oil shipping lanes, it effectively created a mobile anti-access area denial, A2AD, bubble. But let's ignore the diplomatic rhetoric in the papers. The reality out on the open ocean is always much more ruthless and pragmatic. Whoever can cast a long-range net of firepower first controls the ocean. Therefore, the Pentagon simply couldn't stand idly by. For military strategic planners, this shipment wasn't merely a standard arms smuggling operation or an embargo violation. It directly shattered a critical red line. Why, you ask? Just picture this for a moment. If that advanced firepower docked safely, was subsequently fragmented, and smuggled to a network of proxy forces scattered across the region, the fallout would be absolutely catastrophic. Truth be told, confronting a nation with a conventional standing army and predictable doctrines is manageable, but taking fire from decentralized armed groups wielding stealth anti-ship cruise missiles is truly any Navy admiral's worst nightmare. At that point, every narrow choke point, every unnamed small island, runs the risk of turning into a deadly ambush site, posing a direct existential threat to patrolling U.S. carrier strike groups, CSGs. Faced with this strategic risk, U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, understood one thing clearly: time was running out. They were forced to sever this octopus tentacle while it was still swimming in the open ocean. Emergency mobilization orders were immediately issued. The Combined Air and Space Operations Center, CAOC, was running hot. Here, the military top brass had to formulate a solution to this thorny problem. Now, there are multiple ways to destroy a large surface vessel. An attack submarine carrying torpedoes is a traditional option, but often too slow to close the distance from afar. Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from destroyers are formidable weapons, but their flight paths can be intercepted, and crucially, they lack real-time battle damage assessment (BDA) capabilities post-strike. It turned out that in a mission requiring flexible judgment and surgical precision, where the objective was to neutralize the ammunition payload without causing a massive, environmentally disastrous oil spill, autonomous machines were not the optimal choice. Instead, the final decision was made: employ tactical airpower. Entrust the mission to human pilots, operators who could analyze the real-time situation, make split-second firing decisions, and maintain absolute control over the level of destruction. And the spearhead chosen to pierce the ship's defenses was none other than the F-16 Fighting Falcons, standing by on alert at forward operating bases in the region. Many might wonder, why didn't the Pentagon dispatch stealth monsters like the F-22 Raptor or F-35 Lightning II to handle such a strategic target? Why choose the F-16, a fourth-generation fighter design that's decades old? The answer lies in the concept of cost-effectiveness and its time-tested versatility in maritime strike missions. The F-22 was born to own the sky, to dominate air-to-air combat, not to lug heavy bombs to sink ships. The F-35 excels at stealth, but its internal weapons bays are simply too cramped to pack enough heavy anti-ship missiles without carrying them externally, which compromises its stealth. Meanwhile, the F-16 Fighting Falcon is a true blue-collar worker. It's fast, agile, boasts an impressive combat radius, and most importantly, possesses the ability to haul oversized payloads on its external wing hardpoints. Think of it like a pickup truck mounted with a machine gun. It might not be the flashiest, but it always packs enough firepower to crush the target. Furthermore, regional F-16 squadrons consistently maintain peak combat readiness, and their upgraded APG-83 ASA radar systems allow them to see deep into hostile waters. Clearly, for neutralizing a massive surface target, the Fighting Falcon is the most logical, pragmatic choice. Selecting the F-16 as the delivery platform was only half the success. The next vital question was what to hang under its wings. The weapons experts at the Pentagon couldn't just randomly grab a few dumb bombs and drop them on the target. As I mentioned earlier, the most difficult part of this equation was completely neutralizing that massive missile cache without actually sinking the ship and causing a devastating maritime oil spill. This strike required the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. After careful calculation, the tactical menu was finalized with an exceptionally lethal combo: the AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missile to cripple the target's radar and close-in air defenses, paving the way for the killing blow from a GBU-31 JDAM precision-guided penetrator bomb. For those of you who have worked with this type of ordnance, you know exactly what this 2,000-pound JDAM is capable of. The key to this operation is that it's equipped with a delayed fuse. What does that mean? Instead of detonating on impact with the deck, the bomb uses its massive kinetic energy to punch through the thick steel, burrowing deep into the specific cargo hold where the Chinese weapons are hidden before going off. A direct strike to the Achilles heel, using the explosive yield of the cruise missiles themselves to incinerate the entire shipment, extinguishing the threat from within its own shell. The weapons were armed, the target was locked, and now it was time for the Falcons to hunt. Under the cover of pitch-black darkness, a 4-ship element of F-16s roared down the runway, tearing into the night sky from a classified forward operating base. There was no dramatic chatter over the comms. The entire squadron immediately went completely dark, enforcing strict radio silence and killing all exterior lights. In modern warfare, early detection is synonymous with suicide. Those of you who have sat in a cockpit or worked in air traffic control will truly understand the intense stress of this ingress phase. To slip under the continuous sweep of early warning radars on the coastline and the target's own scanning equipment, the F-16 flight had to execute sea-skimming tactics. Just imagine piloting a heavy combat machine, hurtling at near Mach 1 speeds, barely a few dozen meters above the churning waves in total darkness. A single blink of distraction or a minor error from the altimeter, and the result is catastrophic. But as it turns out, the pilots selected for this mission were the absolute most seasoned veterans the Air Force had to offer. They turned themselves into invisible phantoms, silently closing the distance to the massive prey anchored out in the open ocean. CAOC was fast approaching. When the distance was down to just dozens of miles, the F-16 flight suddenly executed a textbook pop-up maneuver. A few fleeting seconds of exposure was all it took for the APG-83 ACER system to scan the battle space, pinpoint the target, and feed the data into the weapons. Target locked, but let's ignore the air raid sirens that were surely blaring frantically on the ship's bridge right now. It was already too late. The AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missile dropped from the rail, streaking forward with the mission of blinding the enemy. As you guys know, the Harpoon in this specific mission isn't meant to instantly sink the behemoth. Skimming just above the waves, the missile pierced the sea mist and accurately smashed into the radar arrays and fire control center housed on the superstructure. The strike didn't touch the lower hull, posing no threat to the ship's structural integrity. The vessel carrying the weapons was now completely stripped of its air defenses, effectively becoming a blind whale stranded in the open ocean. With the ship's eyes gouged out, the F-16 flight immediately accelerated and closed in. At this point, the battle space belonged entirely to them. Target data was already loaded. The pickle button was pressed with cold precision. The GBU-31 JDAM penetrator bomb plummeted, carrying the terrifying kinetic energy of a 2,000-pound steel mass falling from a high altitude. It turns out that in modern warfare, once you lose your protective air defense umbrella, suffering a punishing strike is only a matter of time. Not a single decoy system or intercepting fire could stop this smart bomb from plunging straight toward the ship's cargo hold. As I analyzed in previous sections, the most valuable asset of this strike is the delayed fuse. The JDAM didn't detonate upon impacting the deck. Thanks to its massive kinetic energy and hardened casing, it easily punched through the top deck, burying itself right into the hold containing the strategic missiles. Thousands of hours of US pilot flight training culminated in this exact moment, delivering the explosive charge directly to the enemy's jugular without breaching the ship's outer hull. A perfect surgical scalpel. Boom! The JDAM detonated deep inside the cargo hold. The immense pressure triggered a massive secondary explosion, incinerating all the missile launch tubes and solid fuel the ship was transporting. It acted like an internal furnace. The strategic weapons shipment, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, evaporated in an instant. The best part is that the underwater hull below the draft line was not torn open. Not a single drop of oil leaked into the ocean. The Pentagon achieved its ultimate objective: destroy the weapons, preserve the ship, and prevent an environmental disaster. The moment the ordnance hit its mark, the pilots didn't linger to admire their handiwork. The command "break" echoed over the internal comms. The fighters pulled up hard, enduring extreme G-forces, to rapidly egress the danger zone. Even though the ship's primary radar system was crushed by the Harpoon, In actual combat, it's always better to be safe than sorry. Deploying flares and executing evasive maneuvers is a vital survival lesson to guard against any daring shooters firing man-portable air defense systems, manpads, in desperate retaliation. Before turning back to base, the sniper ATP pods mounted under the F-16s recorded the entire scene to conduct a battle damage assessment, BDA. The high-resolution imagery was fed directly back to the CAOC command center. There, strategic planners nodded in satisfaction. The ship was still buoyant, but the most dangerous cancer had been completely excised. The mission was executed with such precision that it could immediately be written into the textbooks of military academies. This airstrike wasn't merely about destroying a shipment of weapons. It was a heavily weighted strategic deterrence message sent to proxy forces. No matter how sophisticated a cover these organizations use, or how much money they spend procuring modern long-range weapons, the US proved that they possess ample capability to reach into any blind spot on the ocean and smother the threat in its crib. The open seas have no place for rogue players intentionally disrupting the balance of power. For those of us who are passionate about military hardware, this operation leaves behind a valuable lesson. Stealth weapon technology is important, but the flexibility and endurance of the delivery platform are the true keys. The F-16 might be a fourth-generation design, but when equipped with the ISA Magic Eye and smart munitions, combined with top-tier pilot skills, it remains an air combat machine that cannot be underestimated. Sometimes, pragmatism and effectiveness are much more crucial than mere flashiness. That is the complete picture of a perfect maritime surgical strike. What do you veterans and guys think about the decision to use the F-16 paired with JDAMs instead of more expensive alternatives in this scenario? Will this clandestine weapon supply chain truly be broken after this warning shot? Leave your comments below so we can dissect it together. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the Tactical Air Force channel to continue joining me in future in-depth tactical analysis bulletins. Goodbye, and see you on the next frontline.